All right, guys. So this Hunter Biden laptop story has taken a explosive turn, and it is really getting crazy. And these new allegations from Rudy Giuliani are off the charts, guys. So I'm not gonna waste any time. I'm just gonna get into it. But before we do that, my name is Greg Foreman, and you're watching a Black Conservative Perspective. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black Conservative Perspective, aka a liberal's worst nightmare. You can also follow me on Twitter at GForemanBCP. Let's get it. All right, guys. Take a look at this video of Rudy Giuliani doing an interview with Newsmax in which he discloses some very, very, very disturbing information that has been discovered on Hunter Biden's hard drive.
Let's face it, it's Biden, the father, who's on the ballot in 2 weeks. Anything else other than what we've seen so far tying him to Hunter's business?
Yeah, two major things that I found. In addition to this, which basically says that Biden was getting 50% of the bribe money, which makes sense, actually.
People want to talk about conspiracy theories, guys. The only conspiracy theory I see is a conspiracy by the media to cover up for Democrat corruption. That is the only conspiracy I see here. And just because...
Start off, a breakdown for our viewers how the Trump administration's economic policies have benefited the Black community.
Well, there's no doubt that President Trump has led when it comes to having an economic agenda that has benefited the Black community. We saw historic lows in unemployment for the Black community before COVID-19. And then after COVID-19, we saw 5 consecutive months of a decline in the Black unemployment rate, which is a positive thing. We've seen people come out of the Black community, come out of poverty like never before. We've seen the wealth increase in the Black community like never before. So this president, in addition to his economic policies like lowering taxes and lowering the corporate rate for taxes, he's also had a plan with governors to work on licensure issues to make it so that we are removing barriers to entry for a lot of small business owners that have so many burdensome regulations and fees and that it goes with having a license. And so this president has had a holistic policy, even the individual mandate for Obamacare being taken away. That is something that is positive, that impacted the Black community's economic condition. And then when you move forward, the president is doing more to address that for a second term, and I'm proud of that as well.
Now, President Trump and Joe Biden, of course, have very different economic plans, despite Biden trying to copy the president's message of Buy American, Hire American. Just yesterday, rapper 50 Cent posted on Instagram saying, "Vote for Trump," due to the tax hikes that Biden has promised to implement. What would the U.S. economy look like under a Biden administration, and how would that impact the Black community?
Well, there's no doubt when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris say that they are not going to raise your taxes, it's a flat out lie. Because they're going to get rid of the Tax Cuts and Job Act legislation that led to Americans, especially Black Americans, having reduced taxes. In addition to that, it allowed for opportunity zones, which have already invested $75 billion worth of capital into the Black community in just 2 years. And so under the Biden tax plan, 50 Cent was right. He looked at the figures and said, you know what, this is not a good plan for me or my family, my community, so I'm not going to support Joe Biden. I'm going to support President Trump, because under the Biden plan, taxes will go up. He will have trade deals that will make it harder for businesses in this country to not only survive, but also thrive overseas in terms of getting their goods overseas. And the Biden plan will actually increase energy costs because of the Green New Deal and getting rid of things like fracking. And so on the whole, the Biden plan is not going to be good for Americans. It's not going to be good for the Black community, especially because it's going to be a plan that is going to increase everything that President Trump worked to decrease. And the trade deals that he's going to get us into aren't going to be good for our economy either. That's why I'm proud the president has the Platinum Plan, which is his Black economic empowerment agenda for the second term, which is promising to have an environment to have $500 billion worth of access to capital, 5 100,000 new Black-owned businesses and 3 million new jobs for the Black community over the course of 4 years. These are things that the president is doing that are going to benefit the Black experience in this country and empower the Black community and not push us down and hold us back, which Biden would do.
You mentioned the Platinum Plan, and that leads me right to my next question. Another rapper, Ice Cube, did come out in support of the president's work for the Black community last week. He said that Biden's campaign ignored his request to work with him on his contract with Black America. The Trump administration, though, they listened, and he did actually serve as an advisor for that Platinum Plan. Break it down a little further. How does that plan really boost the economic opportunities for the Black community here in the U.S.?
So what the Platinum Plan does is it has a specific tailor-made agenda for the Black community for the second term. And this is a holistic plan that not only addresses things about the economy, which, like I mentioned before, $500 billion for access to capital so that small business owners and entrepreneurs can actually have the funds necessary to start business and to grow businesses. But also it has billions of dollars worth of broadband and telehealth dollars to expand in that way. It also talks about having an opportunity for exploring ways for people to have established credit, because we know a lot of people in the Black community don't have ways to establish credit. They don't own a home or have a credit card. And so it's looking at things like paying your cell phone bill on time and paying your rent on time for your apartment and things of that nature, because those are ways to establish credit. This holistic plan deals with every aspect of Black America's life, from health to safety and security to education, as well as to economic opportunities.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube, and call your cable provider and kindly...
The thing is, ministry's not going to stop. God is still moving. I'm going to Planned Parenthood tonight, and we're going to have church in front of the Planned Parenthood, and we're going to turn up like nobody's business. Like, the gospel of Jesus Christ would not stop. But you guys, we got to push forward, because they are really trying to shut us up. You got conservatives that don't even have a big following right now that can't go live. Like, they're shutting everybody down, bro. And they said that, you know what's so crazy at Meg? Project Veritas. They did. Project Veritas said this was their plan for the next election.
Could not afford,
because they couldn't afford to lose another election. So this we all knew this was coming to pass. So I'm not even surprised. Why is my...
I think 2020 has been a crazy year, but wait, there's more. An asteroid is headed toward Earth. NASA says it is predicted to pass near our planet on November 2nd, one day before the presidential election. Sure, why not? But it...
Lawlessness. That is the most common reason as to why Californians are arming up. Do you blame them? Nope. It's just the logical conclusion that one should go to. And I'm not just going to say that, I'll back it up. Let's talk about what's happening in California, and then let's talk once again about the radical left. Let's expose them for exactly what they are. Let's talk about everything the media won't. You know, Joe Biden, if Antifa is just a myth, why do I have all these stories of these Antifa dweebs committing heinous acts across the country? So we got a lot to talk about, but before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell to be notified every single time I post a new video, since that's by far the best thing you can do to support the channel. Follow me on Twitter and check out my Subscribe Star, both links are in the description, and check out the Teespring shop where you guys can get the 3 Scoops President gear set. Now with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright, so let's start off with California, which seems to be less commie, I guess, nowadays, thanks to the commies. Funny how that works. Study: 110,000 Californians bought guns during pandemic. Fear of, quote, lawlessness, most common reason. A new study reveals that 110,000 Californians bought guns during the coronavirus pandemic, 43% for the first time, and the most common reason was given fear of lawlessness. The study, carried out by the Violence Prevention Research Program at the University of California, Davis, casts firearm purchases as a response to the pandemic and concludes that the COOF exacerbated persistent structural, economic, and social inequalities in the conditions that contributed to violence and its consequences. The study reveals that 43% of people who purchased firearms during the pandemic were first-time gun owners. The authors conclude that this reflects underlying inequalities in society that the COOF pandemic and efforts to lessen its spread have compounded the burden of violence-related harms. Now that's a whole lot of pseudo-intellectual academia BS jargon, and I'm gonna say it and say it real quick. Give me a break. Violence didn't increase because of the COVID pandemic and the lockdowns. Violence increased due to far-left activist rhetoric and, of course, calls to violence. And, of course, calls to defund police departments, demonizing and scapegoating police officers, which has directly led to skyrocketing in crime pretty much across the nation, or more specifically in Democrat strongholds. So does it surprise you that Californians are buying arms to protect themselves? People who own businesses feel vulnerable to crime, looting, vandalism, arson. They feel vulnerable in the sense that police presence could diminish quite significantly and their communities become lawless zones of havoc. Does it surprise you? It doesn't surprise me. Just look at Minnesota. Business owners have been complaining for months now to the city council that they don't feel safe ever since police presence was significantly reduced. That is why we're seeing the phenomenon in California. That's also why I'd expect California to go more red than it did in 2016. I don't think the state's gonna flip, but the silent majority is less silent this time round, especially in places like California. I mean, just check this out. It's the concept of standing up for the president, for self, for country, for safety, law and order, and all in a peaceful manner. Some Democrats might argue that buying guns is inherently, or by virtue, not peaceful, but that couldn't be further from the truth. You have a sacred right to defend yourself and your family. Self-defense is not violence. And in pretty much every environment where we've seen right-wingers protest or rally, in any scenario where there's open carry or something like that, we haven't seen violence. We haven't seen a call to violence, especially not in the way the Democrats like to portray it, or like to pretend it's happening. And on the exact opposite end, like to pretend like left-wing violence doesn't. But we know the reality because we're paying attention. How many videos have I made covering countless stories of people being assaulted in the streets based on political motive? How many left-wing riots have we covered at this point? It's an endless stream, and every single time I make one of those videos, I could have maybe 3, 4, 5, sometimes even more events that happened in the last couple days or in one day. We're not talking about collecting stuff for a month and having one video. We're talking about constantly, every week, every day, another story. And here we go again. Let's go through a couple stories which happened in the last 3 days. First one, video, black Trump supporter viciously beaten at San Francisco free speech rally, sucker punched and his teeth were knocked out. The tolerant, radical, quote, anti-racist left attacking a black man because he's rallying for free speech. The optics not only from the race dynamic of white Antifa members assaulting a black man based on political view, but also the radical, intolerant, authoritarian left attacking somebody who's rallying for free speech. Double the optics. Check this one out. Female Trump supporter attacked, hospitalized following altercation with Women's March activists in DC. Her name was Isabella Maria DeLuca, and she works with Turning Point USA. She was choked, she was slammed, she was punched, all for the very simple fact of supporting the president and having a Trump flag. The peaceful, tolerant left once again at play. Here we go, another one. Video. Women's March protesters verbally accost a pregnant woman, allegedly tell her your kid should be that specific word. Can't say it on YouTube, but you guys can see it. Oh, how peaceful. You know, like Michelle Obama said, mostly peaceful protests in the name of racial solidarity.
And they're pinning it all on what's been an overwhelmingly peaceful movement for racial solidarity. It's true. Research backs it up. Only a tiny fraction of demonstrations have had any violence at all.
Oh, you mean like this, Michelle Obama? The city will be on fire. New Yorkers reportedly prepared to flee homes to avoid election-related unrest. It's so normalized at this point, it's so predictable, the normalization of violence from left-wing activists, left-wing punks, radical left-wing groups, that we know it's coming before it happens. If the president wins, we know it's happening. We know exactly what's going to go on in Portland, Washington, D.C., New York, California. We understand what the intentions of these far-left radical groups are. In fact, I just showed you guys a poll the other day that almost 40% of college students say that they will protest if Trump wins. What do you think is going to happen? You think they're going to be peaceful protests? I think through history, or at least recent history, we should expect something very different. And you know, it's not even just expecting. I mean, it's quite predictable. We know what to expect, but they've also stated their mission if things don't go their way on election night. If they don't get their geriatric incompetent to win because Orange Man bad, Instead, they've stated a million different times they're going to burn things down. They're going to go crazy on the streets. You know, every single time anything happened that could have potentially triggered leftist outrage over the last couple months, I think we're all thinking the same thing. Oh, well, what city's burning now? And we've been right 100% of the time. The normalization of violence on the left-wing side is frankly beyond repair. And that's why we're seeing citizens stand up. Frankly, the last hope. And just to finish off this video on a positive note, we've also got this story right over here. 90 street thugs sued for damage done to local Cincinnati business during BLM riots in May. So once again, it's just the people on their own fighting against the mob. If the politicians won't do it, then what do you expect is going to happen? You know, Democrats, CNN pundits, liberals, and